You're listening to the Well Woman podcast. I'm your host, Jema, women's menstrual cycle educator, natural fertility coach, and daytime mermaid. This is a place where we discuss all things periods, poo, ovulation, fertility, and sex. Join me weekly as we rediscover our menstrual cycles, unlock its superpowers, and guide you back into your cyclical nature. This is episode 170 of the Well Woman podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Reclaiming Your Cycle. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be diving now into understanding the different phases of your cycle. And there's no better place to start than inner winter, menstruation. Now, when it comes to the seasons, I learned about the inner seasons of the body when I studied ancestral health back in 2014. Feels like a lifetime ago now. But when it comes to these seasons, it was really taught to me in the way in which we live in tune with the cyclical seasons of the year. How do we live cyclically in our own year, moving through our own spring to our own summer, and then right round to our own winter again? And when I started to learn about these inner seasons, it just made so much sense. I was like, oh, well, of course, like I understand how to serve my body in my outer spring, but how do we do this in our inner seasons? So inner winter is the time of menstruation. Now, a lot of people get a little bit confused as to when this is, but inner winter really begins the first full day of bleeding. This is also the day that you'd start tracking your cycle. Now, when we look at inner winter though, we might have some inner winter feelings towards the end of our previous cycle. So a couple of little word things here. A lot of people get confused as to cycle. What am I talking about when I say this word cycle? I'm talking and referring to the entire menstrual cycle from day one of your bleed right through to the next bleed beginning. Your period time is your bleeding time, and that's what inner winter is. I love calling it inner winter because it's a little bit like a bear. So in cyclical school, I teach the analogies of animals, and this is the bear season. And the bear season is where you're really in your inner cave. Now, this inner cave is a great time for reflection. It's your stock taking season of the year, of your cycle. And also for the year, when you're in your outer seasons, it is also a stock take time. But this bear season of inner winter is a really great time to reflect on what you have learnt, what you have gained, and what you're ready to let go of from the previous cycle. Whilst we are reflecting, inner winter is also a really good time to honor and rest. Now, regardless of whether you have a menstrual bleed right now or you're amenorrheic, meaning you don't have a menstrual bleed, or maybe you're postpartum and you're breastfeeding and you follow a moon cycle, the inner winter time of the moon cycle is a beautiful time to honor yourself for rest. Often when we don't have a bleed, we're like, just keep going, girlfriend. We don't need to slow down. And we just don't rest. And rest really allows us to feel fully nurtured and nourished. So there's always a really great time to rest around the new moon or when day one of your cycle comes, depending on what type of cycle you follow, whether that be the moon cycle or your menstrual cycle. So inner winter is also a really beautiful time for light movement. So a question I always get is, how do we move during inner winter? Firstly, no engaging. It's really important to not restrict and hold on to your body and tighten your abs. And you'd be surprised, so many movements and motions of movement require stability through our core. When we turn on the stability through our core, we actually turn on our muscles in our abdominal area, and that can even mean your pelvic floor. And what happens is we actually can restrict the flow of menstruation. So I like to think of that when you are restricting and holding on to muscles, it's very hard for you to relax and open up at the same time. So when we're menstruating, it's really important to allow your body to rest. Now, regardless whether you're a professional athlete, whether you just love going for a run every now and then, or you love hitting the gym or going to yoga, it's a really beautiful time to rest. So movement on every day of your cycle is encouraged. And so during this time, I love light movement. Personally, I'm recording this and it's day 5 of my menstrual cycle, and I'm just coming out of those bleeding feels. Day 5 for me is the day where I'm a little bit more like, oh, I feel back in my body. I'm actually going to be going to yoga later today. And for me, that's going to be a lighter yoga class. Nothing too crazy, cray. But when it comes to movement, we want to be slow and mobile and motionful. So what I mean, is that even a word? But what I mean by that is walk, go for a morning walk, go for an afternoon, evening walk, roll your body on the ground and do some stretching. Maybe you're going to get a roll and release ball and release some muscle tension that you might have. Maybe you're going to dance as you make dinner in the kitchen. These are all beautiful ways for you to move your body and allow your body to remain open, and also surrender to flow. It's a beautiful reminder for your inner winter time when you are still in flow and motion with menstruation, that your body can flow and stay in motion too. So that's one way that you can move your body, or a few different ways you can move your body. But honoring rest is very important. Now let's talk about food with menstruation. Like, what do we actually do with our food? Now, menstrual time is a beautiful time, especially. Now, I encourage warm foods most of the time. Having studied Ayurveda and loving the Ayurvedic philosophies, warm foods provides nurturing nourishment to the digestive system. It communicates safety, and it really is an all-round digestive nourisher. The temperature of our food is really important. But often the world that we live in today is very much about convenience foods, rushing out the door, having something on the go, and sometimes that means cold things. And one of the common breakfast items or recipes or things on the menu is a smoothie. Now, where I live in Australia here, it's a tropical location. It is warm most of the time. And so I could easily dive into a smoothie whilst I'm menstruating. But for your menstruation, having cold things is like hardening coconut oil. We really want to allow motion to flow. So when we're having cold foods during our inner winter time, this could be a contributing factor to spotting, to stagnance in your bleed, to dark colored bleeding. There's lots of different things that it can lead to long term, but I strongly encourage you, when you look at the foods for inner winter, this is a really great time to welcome in warm foods. So you want warm breakfasts, warm snacks, warm lunches and dinners. I like to think of them as soups and stews. I love making khichdi and dal. I love making curry, and I love having roasted veggies. My partner and I do this pot veg mix, and we just literally let the oven do all the work, but it's so delicious. And they're my go-to favorite meals during my inner winter time. They provide support and nourishment to my menstruation, but also help me feel fully nurtured and nourished too. Little top tip that I learned during Ancestral Health, that seeds, the cycle of our seeds is really important. And this is an important time of our cycle to consume reds, purples, and maybe dark orange foods. Anything that's a red whilst you're menstruating is a good color to celebrate. Plus, it's also linked with your base chakra, which is also the color of red. So connecting with your red colors with your food, this is a great time to do that. You can wear red, you can use red clothing, you can wear or use red towels in your bathroom, red linen on your beds. Red is a really beautiful way to celebrate your menstruation at this particular time of your cycle during inner winter. Now, inner winter for some can be very, very challenging. So let's talk about that for a moment. Inner winter can sometimes be filled with what I call cycle signs, those challenging things in your cycle that make you feel uncomfortable and uncomfortable whilst you're menstruating. They might be bloating, headaches, back pain, cramping, heavy period pain, dullness. Now, cycle challenges and cycle signs are common, but they're not normal. So how do we bring our body back into a normal experience of menstruation? So it's normal for your body to feel dull in your womb area. So if you were to place your hands in a nice diamond shape with your thumbs together and your pointer fingers together with your palms apart with a diamond in between the space of your hands, you could place that over the top of your womb with your thumbs close to your belly button and your fingers pointing down towards your yoni. That is your womb space. This particular space of your body is really about warmth. And when we have challenge in this area, we'll feel tightness and tension. But a normal, natural menstrual cycle, when we're menstruating, it feels dull. It kind of feels like there's a weight being pulled down towards your yoni as your cervix drops down and menstruates and releases the menstrual uterine lining through the cervix space. Now, this dullness is very, very natural. It's also natural that our uterus expands. I love talking about the method of expansion and contraction. I take a sigh through my breath as I reflect on the fact that our lungs expand and contract all the time. Our heart expands and contracts, our pupils expand and contract. For heaven forbid, our feet expand and contract after we've been walking around and standing up all day. So it's natural for our uterus to expand when we're menstruating as well. Now, it kind of somewhat doubles in size, and so that's why we can feel a little bit puffy or bloated. The label it's been given is bloated when we're menstruating. But there's a very big difference between digestion or digestive bloat and menstrual bloat. So menstrual bloat is not bloating, it's expansiveness. Think about that for a moment. Your menstruation is expansive. Holy frickin' moly. It is. It's very expansive. Not bloated. So if you have food bloating from digestive challenges, that's a digestive thing. But when it comes to menstruation, focusing on the menstrual cycle, we're looking at that expansiveness of our uterus is very, very natural and very normal. And I love at that time to get some warm oil, give myself a nice belly massage, really nurture and expand myself. I let myself just flop my belly out. My good friend Rosie Rees from the Yoni Pleasure Palace would say, stop sucking it in. Allow your belly to be soft, full, and open, just as we require and we really desire when we're menstruating our cervix and yoni to be soft and open at this time too. So if you do experience cycle challenges during your inner winter time, don't accept them. I challenge you to explore what they mean and where they come from. Now, there's many other episodes that talk about all these different things, but specifically the little tips I've given you already are very helpful. So warm foods, move your body lightly, no restriction. You're not tensing your bicep, because when you tense your bicep, you can't exactly relax your bicep. So no tension. We want openness and relaxation. So they're the biggest tips and focuses to start with when it gets to knowing and reclaiming your cycle for your inner winter. Now, when it comes to your inner winter, a little bit of a ritual is it's a beautiful time for reflection. Your inner winter time, when I talked about it being the cave or the bear season, is a really reflective time. This is when you are your most intuitive. It's also when you are the most aligned with the inner guidance that's flowing through you. So this is a great time to sit, to journal, to start a new menstrual cycle tracker. If you don't yet have our brand new menstrual cycle tracker, head over to wellsome.com/LYC or head to my website somewhere and you'll find it there, and you can download the Love Your Cycle tracker. Day 1 of your cycle, inner winter, is a great time to sit down, summarize your previous cycle, and reflect on the brand new cycle that you're beginning by starting a new cycle tracker. While you're doing this, become aware of what intuitive thoughts are coming to you. It could be the conclusion of something from your previous cycle. It could be an idea or a thought or a dream or a desire that's popping into your mind, your third eye mind, not your mental mind, but your intuitive mind, and guiding you to a new creative idea, maybe a new project, maybe a new relationship, maybe a new conversation. Your inner winter is the ideal time for this. Now, something that I personally love to do during my inner winter is collect my menstrual blood and gift this back to the earth in my own veggie garden. Now, you don't have to do this. You can, of course, just wash it down the sink or the toilet, but it's really beautiful to get to know your menstrual blood. We'll be talking about that in an upcoming episode. But before we jump in there, I just want to let you know that your menstrual blood is something to explore. Just as kids, when they pick their nose, they explore their boogers and they're like, oh, what is this thing? And sometimes they eat it. Now, I'm not asking you to eat your menstrual blood, but I'm just saying it's really great time to explore. What does it feel like? What is the texture like? Pour it over your hand in the shower. Pour it over your belly. Rub it onto your skin and smell it, feel it, look and get to know the texture and the sensations of your menstruation. This is a life force and it's a superpower when you get to know it. So there's a few little insights to your inner winter time. My inner winter time was my most challenging time of my cycle when I was reclaiming my own cycle back in 2014. I really struggled to get to know this time of my cycle, my bleed time. And that's because for a long time I'd rejected it. Now, if you're in a similar situation and you feel like you've been rejecting your cycle or your menstruation, I encourage you to just start incorporating some of the little tips that I've given in this little mini episode so that you can start to get to know your own inner winter, reclaim your own inner winter, and live in alignment with your own inner winter. So back to the summary: warm foods, slow, mindful movement, and don't turn your abs on. Like if you're someone who likes going to the gym like I used to, just don't turn your abs on. And be reflective is the word I was looking for. Really dive into like, how do I feel right now? And what's coming up for me? And, what am I desiring right now? Or how can I best support myself? So stick to those inner winter tips and you will be well on your way. So thank you so much for tuning in to another mini episode of Reclaiming Your Cycle for our Reclaiming Your Cycle series. I look forward to joining you next week with a brand new episode talking a little bit more about inner winter. Thank you so much for tuning into every episode of the Well Woman podcast. For everything we mentioned in today's episode, you can find this in the show notes over at wellsome.com/podcast. If this episode excited you, please hit follow on Spotify, which means all of my episodes will pop up in your feed weekly so you never miss a weekly drop. I'd love you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts too. Love this episode? Come and follow me over on Instagram at wellsome_Jema. Say hi and share what you've taken away from this episode with me. Now, is there a bestie, sister, or a friend who you know who might be fed up, frustrated, and confused with their cycles? Are they ready to join you in awakening their cyclical essence too? Well, take a screenshot of this podcast episode, share it on your socials, email it, text it, or any way you need to get it to them. So together we can all live in flow, harmony, and balance with our cycles. Now, until next time, beautiful, get connected, listen to your body, and remember, body confidence all begins with living in tune with your menstrual cycle.